when I got the word that I was going to get out, and the then prosecutor, Mr. Bradley, was trying to negotiate my release, that was one of the issues. I was called on a Saturday and said, look, you can be on the street Tuesday if you agree that there will be no investigation or admission of wrongdoing, there will be no depositions. And I told Barry Scheck to play hardball, and within a number of hours they cratered, because why is one of the most important reasons, one of the most important questions we have in our lives, not just in my case, but on almost every level. Why is the most important thing. I am willing to sit down and talk with Ken Anderson, the man who is prosecuting my case. He hasn't been forthcoming for reasons I'm not sure of, but if you don't pursue the why, then nothing else really matters.
Yes, well said. And you've said it, Jim, but do you find a prosecutor or a judge or a police officer who is involved in these prosecutions who is willing to be of assistance to you when you give them the information, when you say, look, I understand what you felt was the case, but here are the facts? Do you find assistance from that, or do you find obstruction?
Well, for the most, imagine you put somebody in prison and then you let them get executed. How are you going to live with that unless you build up a lot of scar tissue that leads you to say, well, I know he's guilty, even though this and that and the other and everything else, I know he's guilty. One of the prosecutors in this case is, by everybody's statement, is a very good man in Corpus Christi. He left the prosecutor's office soon after this. He's a very well-known civil litigator in the city, and people respect him. And he has gone into the press and said, well, I know that this case stood on an eyewitness identification, and now I believe that eyewitness identification was bad. I would no longer stand on that eyewitness identification because it was tainted in many, many ways. And the person who made the identification has since come out and said, I couldn't tell one Hispanic man from another. They were all Julio to me. And I wasn't even 50-50 when I made that statement, but the police wanted it. So he's gotten off of the identification, but he holds to the fact that Carlos de Luna, a mentally disabled man, couldn't even make it through the 8th grade, had an IQ of about 71 or 72, lied on the stand about an inconsequential fact, had nothing to do with his case, but he did tell a lie about it. And this prosecutor in Corpus Christi says, well, he lied about that, so he must be lying about everything else. And I think that's just his defense. He's got to defend himself against the fact that he did something where he made a big, big mistake, and he's got to live with that. And I do sometimes wonder about when he really has to face up to this, whether it's near his death or maybe after his death, and he really has to face up to this, and how that will go for him. But I'm convinced that he, like many others, won't face up to it until that time comes.